I went to a coffee shop the other day. There was a guy there with a guitar. He was a singer psalm writer, and I don't have a punchline to that joke. I thought of it and decided to go with it, but I can't improvise. There's just no. I don't have what you come up with a punchline to. I saw a singer psalm writer. In any case, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? The one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart. And that's Psalm 15, 1 and 2. It does go on, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor, who casts no slur on others, who despises a vile person, who but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps an oath even when it hurts, and does not change their mind, who lends money to the poor without interest, who does not accept a bribe except the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken, which is like, so the perfect person. In other words, who you don't stand a chance of getting there. Whoo boy, and it's not just about being honest. Ha. Welcome back to Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. I am your host, Phil Gonzalez, and this week we are. You want to be honest? I'm going to be totally honest with you. That's the book. It's honesty. It's all about honesty. This episode is all about honesty, being honest. But is it? Is it really about being honest? Does honesty count? The book would have us believe so. Does honesty count? Honesty Counts. It's the Berenstain Bears Honesty Counts from 2020, and it's a good-looking one. If you take a look at it, it's a good-looking one. It's Living Light's book, a faith story. You got a cover here. You got Papa Bear looking befuddled. You got Mama Bear with an expression I've never seen on a Berenstain Bear before. You've got Brother Bear with an expression I have never seen on a Berenstain Bear before. He looks like some kind of deranged Muppet. You've got Sister Bear with an expression. Mike is really pulling out all the stops with this cover. He's really showing you that he knows how to twist and to contort these bears' faces in ways hitherto unimagined. And then you got Honey in the background looking stunned and shocked and thoughtful all at the same time. But then you've got Too Tall Grizzly, everyone's favorite bear in Beartown, standing facing them with a wicked grin on his face, with his hands behind his back, fingers crossed, knowing he's lying. And you got Scuzz or Vinny or Smirk, one of his buddies, there just yucking it up. Like with his hands over his mouth, like trying not to laugh. And you got the title. It says "Honesty Counts" with a halo over the O, so you know we're in for big business. So what I'm going to glean, what I'm going to gather, what I'm going to guess from this cover is that this is a book in which, I don't know, Too Tall somehow Eddie Haskell's his way into the good graces of the parents, and Mama's not buying it. He somehow gets one over on brother and sister, and Mama figures it out, and Papa is one of the people who's been like tricked. He's gone in with one of his buddies to pull a fast one on some people. That's what I gather. I'm absolutely wrong. I have read the book, so I know what's coming. But from looking at the cover, I would think it was something else. I would think it was, I don't know, something very personal to Too Tall Grizzly. What we are in for, however, is a book that it took me a while to figure out what it was based on. This is a pre-existing story that has been wildly adapted, not like loosely, basically adapted into a Living Light's faith story. Some of the major elements have been dropped. Many have been retained. One of the main characters has been lost, but a new main character has been added. And the entire point of the endeavor has been sunken because this book makes no sense as far as like what is it intended to do? What's the lesson it's trying to teach? How are these characters behaving? What's going on? Honesty Counts. I would say confusion reigns more like, because this book is confusing. But let's take a look at it. I want to take a look at this book. So this is Honesty Counts. Now up top, I read to you I read to you the psalm, who may live on your holy mountain, the one whose walk is blameless, the one who does what is righteous, who speaks truth from their heart. Absolutely nothing to do with this book. It has truth in it, so I assume that's why Mike included it, because it says the word truth. But otherwise, that's not what this psalm is about. Like this book's point, if it has one, is not what this psalm is talking about. This psalm goes way into like everything you need to do to live on the holy mountain. And it's a lot of things. You heard up top, I read the whole thing. There's a lot of things you got to do to live on that holy mountain. You got to, and if you are speaking the truth from your heart, that never occurs in this book. The truth does come out. Truth does out, as they say. But not for honesty reasons, and not, I think, like genuinely. It comes out because it's like forced out, if that makes any sense, but not in a way that's going to result in anyone ending up on a holy mountain. Certainly not the holy mountain. But let's find out what this book is about. Now you have these 2 pages that barely weigh in on the rest of the story. They barely matter when we get to the rest of the story. And why? We spend a good solid page. No, and this book is nicely illustrated. I like this book. Don't get me wrong. Nicely illustrated. But Mike spends a 2-page spread talking about Papa Bear loading up the Red Roadster for the yearly. Okay, it's a yearly Cub Camp out for the chapel in the woods. So the church is holding a camp out for cubs, meaning I assume it's like some kind of a sleepaway camp for the church. So in my mind, immediately, I'm like, okay, sleepaway camp for the church. You're probably going to have like 30 or so kids there, a few counselors, some tents set up. It's an ordeal. We know that Bear Country, and we know that Bear Town, and we know the Chapel in the Woods in particular has a lot of cubs. We've seen their Sunday school, so we know that there is an array of children who will be at this. We know Ferdy Factual won't be at it, but everyone else is up for grabs. Okay, got a lot of kids. Yearly Cub Camp out, Chapel in the Woods, and they are loading up sleeping bags, lanterns, picnic basket, tent, matches, cooking pots, fishing poles. So they are roughing it, like, right? Like these cubs are getting ready to slum it, rough it, be out in the woods, be out in the wilderness. Is that what this book is going to be about? Is it going to be about Too Tall putting one over on everyone somehow in the woods? Somehow. I don't know. Maybe it's not. None of this has anything to do with anything. In fact, the very nature of this camp out is going to be wildly up in the air, because we'll find out. Because the Cubs are excited about it. I can't wait to sleep on it. Brother's excited about sleeping outside, which doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why anyone would ever be excited about that. That doesn't seem like anything a human being would want to do. Why would you ever want to sleep outside under the stars? That's why we have roofs, or tents at least. But Sister's like, no, we're going to win the annual canoe race down the Rapid River this year. I just know it. So apparently, Chapel in the Woods yearly Cub Campout, loaded up with supplies. One of the things at the Cub Campout, probably the last thing before the parents come and pick everybody up, is going to be an annual canoe race down the Rapid River. And she's like, I know we're going to win it this year. So this is something that the Cubs have been trying to win now, apparently for a few years. Now, already this is sending off bells in my head. Little tingly bells, little ringly bells, chiming and chiming in my head going, this sounds vaguely familiar. And if you're thinking of it's probably the Berenstain Bears shoot the rapids. Rapid River? Some kind of canoe expedition? Shooting the rapids sounds like what this... It's not, though. This is not based on Shoot the Rapids. It's based on something similar, but we'll get to it. It's something we've covered, trust me, and it contains a character who is an owl. He's not in this book. So the Cubs get to camp. They get settled. It establishes they get settled. And we see a picture. We see Preacher Brown and his wife, Mrs. Brown, wearing camp hats. Now, Preacher Brown is decked out in his, like, he's got his preacher collar. He's got his, like, clerical collar on and full, like, clerical regalia. Like, he's wearing, like, his black suit and, like, gray sweater vest. And his, like, he looks like he's getting ready. He looks like he's getting ready to deliver a sermon at church. I understand that Mike's like, you got to keep these characters on, like, got to keep them on model. But would it have been hard to let Preacher Brown at least wear shorts and a t-shirt? Like, you can still keep the clerical collar on. I have seen priests in their clerical collars and other clothes. They don't have to wear like all black garb outside for camping. Okay. But we see brother and sister, cousin Fred and Lizzie Bruin. And they're wearing camp hats. So these must be that we know they're at camp because Preacher Brown and Mrs. Brown are wearing camp hats as well. Everyone's putting on, like, they have life vests and paddles for the canoe race. It says Preacher Brown and Mrs. Brown were busy sorting life vests and paddles near the river. The annual canoe race was set for later that day. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this is like a first day thing then. So we're going to this camp, this Cub Camp out. But the canoe race is the first event. So I guess, okay, I guess. But, okay, so where are all the rest of the Cubs? Well, the next thing we find out is that there would be 2 canoes in the race. So it's a race of, all right, there are two groups racing. One paddled by sister, brother, cousin Fred and Lizzie Bruin. The other by Too Tall Grizzly and his gang. Which means, and it does mean this, because this is all we ever see, there are 8 Cubs at this camp out. This Cub Camp out. Brother, sister, Lizzie, and Fred, and then the bad kids. Which means that they were like, we only have space for 8 children this year. We need them to be evenly divided amongst children who are going to heaven and children who are going to hell. So, well, because we got lessons to teach, lessons to learn. And I'm like, where are all the rest of the Cub? Like, where? Maybe we'll see them in a minute. But so Preacher Brown's like, the race will go down the rapids and around the bend in the river and the finish line of the old oak tree. We'll meet up there. So he shows it. So keep this in. There's a lot to keep in mind here. Preacher Brown shows a map of the race. It is a, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm going to try to describe it for you. Imagine a horseshoe. One end of the horseshoe is the starting line. The other end of the horseshoe is the finish line. So they both start at the top, and then like it dips down at the bottom, comes back up. It's literally a horseshoe shape. That is the race, right? Like, it's just this horseshoe shape. Finish on the left, start on the right. That's I don't know why they didn't do it the other way, just for narrative's sake. But and then down at the bottom, you can't really see it on this map, but you'll see it later. Down at the bottom of the map is the rapids. And that's it. So you'll start at one end of the horseshoe, you'll end at the other. This isn't a huge race, all right? I would say at the most, we're looking at 5 minutes of racing, okay? Like maybe 5 minutes, maybe if it takes a while to get you started, 10 minutes. But it's literally a short horseshoe. Like, looking at the width of the river, maybe 2 canoes can fit next to each other on this river, maybe 3. With that in mind, yeah, it's at most a 5-7 minute race. I don't watch many canoe races. It's not a long race. Keep that in mind. Okay, so there's a horseshoe shape that you're going around. There's trees in the middle of the horseshoe. There's a starting line and a finish line up near the top of the horseshoe. And then the tops of the horseshoe go off into the rest of the river. So it's like the river's going along. It dips down into a weird horseshoe shape and then keeps going. So finally, the time comes. So now it's time for the race. We don't find out anything more about this camp out, by the way. We're done with camping. We are all about canoeing now. Is there any other activity planned? We don't know. But they kind of blew it all on the first day because that's what, I mean, they're just like, all right, let's get ready to canoe. We're going to canoe our hearts out, kids. So they ready. Okay. And now I have my second problem. Finally, the time came. Yeah. So finally the time comes. 2 teams push their canoes into the water. Ready? Get set. Paddle, cried Preacher Brown. And I'm like, your signal for go should be short, sharp, and quick. It should be a gunshot. It should be the word go, but not paddle. That's a long, drawn-out word, and it's 2 syllables long. Like, people are like, so do we go when you start the word paddle? Do we go when you end the word paddle? Get ready, set, paddle, paddle. It doesn't work. That's a bad one, Preacher Brown. You've apparently been doing this for years. I don't know why you haven't figured this out yet. There's probably been a lot of false starts. So the teams paddle as fast as they can. All right, so here's what happens. Starts off with them neck and neck. And like I said, this river is about 2 canoes wide, maybe 3. Starts out with them neck and neck. So brother and sister, cousin Fred and Lizzie Bruin, they pull ahead because they're better they're better paddlers than the Two-Tall Gang. They're more in sync. They get to the rapids. So we get up to whitewater boiling rapids. My next thought about this is this a good activity for 8-year-olds? Is it good? I know they have life vests, but I also know from watching certain YouTube videos, like guy almost dies in a whitewater canoe rapids, that it's not the safest thing in the world for children to do. Shouldn't there be an adult in one of the boats? At least, I don't know. It's a rocky shore. There don't seem to be any spectators for this event, because you'll see what I mean. The water boiled up ahead of them. So they get to the rapids, and these aren't just rapids. This isn't just like rough water. It's like going down. It's like steps going down. We'll get to that. Like it's waterfalls. So they shoot into the rapids, and it's like a plunge, like the canoe. It's a canoe. Plunges in 8-year-olds, 8 and like 9-year-olds plunge into the rapids, right? And we kind of see there's a huge rock called Big Bear Rock, and it's shaped like a bear, an angry, evil bear, a big bear, smack in the middle of, so you plunge into these rapids, and the first thing that happens is you're like, there's a rock right in front of you. Like that you will, if you smash into this rock, A, your canoe breaks, B, you get thrown out of the canoe, C, you're dead because you've been thrown into whitewater rapids. Like, and these things are busy. Like these are dangerous rapids. The rock knows it. The bear in the rock, pretty angry looking. And if you also notice that I said it's in the middle because the river goes to two sides. It goes off to one wild rapid on one side of the Big Bear Rock and then into like a lower rapid on the other side. So it splits off, branches off, and immediately after Big Bear Rock, you hang to the right. If you stay to the right of Big Bear Rock, there's a deadly whirlpool. Now, from watching other YouTube videos, I can tell you that deadly whirlpools are deadly. Stroke, 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 called Lizzie as they curved around swirling whirlpool. The whirlpool is larger than their canoe. It looks like it leads into the pit of hell. It is huge, it is wide, it is deep, it will suck you down and kill you. And I know this can happen because, again, I've seen rescue videos of people who've been trapped in whirlpools. It's a thing at rapids. Dangerous. If I sound a little bit worked up, it's because I am. So we have Cubs almost died plunging into the rapids. Cubs almost died smashing into Big Bear Rock. Cubs almost died getting trapped in the swirling whirlpool, getting thrown out of their boats. Even if you get thrown out, even if you have a life vest on, there's no guarantee you're going to survive. The swirling whirlpool will suck you under, right? You get trapped under the canoe. Again, there's only huge rocks on either side. It is very difficult for someone to get to you if you need help. There are no adults around. There's no spectators for this race. I see nobody watching these Cubs. Are they out of the woods? Of course they're not out of the woods, because then they get to 20-step falls. What is this? It's a graded waterfall. It's an actual waterfall, but it's a slope. You can go down it, except that it's broken up into 20 steps, which means that it's like waterfall, 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 waterfall. You go down 20 mini waterfalls. 8-year-olds, children, little kids, little cubs, cubbity-doos. 20 waterfalls. Stroke, 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 called Fred. They get to the bottom and they're like, whew. They look back to see how Too Tall and the gang are doing, and they're nowhere to be seen. Now, my first thought, if I was a canoeist, canoe boy, canoe one, if I was canoeing, and I was canoeing with someone else in another canoe through rapids, whirlpool, 20-step falls, and I looked back and they were nowhere to be seen, my first thought would not be brother's thought, which is, I guess they decided not to risk the falls. My first thought would be, they died. Our friends, bullies though they might sometimes be, our friends perished in either the rapids, the swirling whirlpool, or the 20-step falls. Like, you have three options here. But at one of those points, their canoe overturned, no grown-ups, no spectators, rocks on either side of the river, hard to get a foothold. they're probably drowned by now. And this does happen. I know people who've lost friends and family members. I don't have to prove to you that this is a dangerous undertaking. I'm just trying to say that people know it's a dangerous undertaking, and yet we're still letting 8 and 9-year-olds do this. So brother and sister, they're all like, hooray, we're going to win. Here's my other note. You can go either way around Big Bear Rock, right? You can go to the right, you can go to the left. Brother and sister and them went to the right. They think, I'm going to assume, that Too Tall Grizzly went to the left, because it says, I guess they decided not to risk the falls, which means that if you go to the left, you're not going to hit Swirling Whirlpool, you're not going to hit 20-step falls, you're only going to have to deal with the rapids. So if they assume that Too Tall and his gang went to the left, why would they assume the next thing, which is, hooray, we're going to win? I'm going to assume that if you didn't have to deal with the whirlpool and you bypassed the falls, you're probably in the lead at this point. The reason Too Tall and the gang aren't behind you is because they're ahead of you. That's all I can guess. Too Tall and the gang were nowhere to be seen. I guess they decided not to risk the falls. Do you think they just got out? Is that your thought? That makes no sense. They either A, drown, B, are beating you. And wouldn't you know it, the Cubs get around the bend in the river, and there's Too Tall and the gang waiting, leaning against a tree. I need to point out, once more, they are presumably at the end of the race. There is not an adult to be seen, not a spectator around. Apparently, they were sent off on their way. Nobody thought to watch the race. And there's proof of this in just a second. Leaning against a tree was Too Tall and the gang. How'd you get ahead of us? We've just covered, brother, how they got ahead of you. They didn't risk the falls. We just paddled around one side of Big Bear Rock while you paddled around the other side, said Too Tall. It literally makes nothing but sense. Yeah, smirked Scuzz. You were so busy with stroking that you never noticed us. And then they get mocked. Here's where Too Tall makes his mistake. What Too Tall and the gang should have said was, we went around Big Bear Rock and it's faster that way. We went around the other side of Big Bear Rock and it's faster that way. I don't know why you guys didn't do it. You were ahead of us. But we went around the other side and it's faster that way. Instead, they decide to double down on the humiliation by chanting stroke, stroke, stroke and dancing around the other Cubs, which perturbs the other Cubs and calls attention to their victory. They're overselling their victory. Because then Preacher Brown walks up. Now the adults turn up. And by the adults, I mean Preacher Brown, Mama and Papa. Mr. and Mrs. Bruin, Barry Bruin, nowhere in sight. Cousin Fred's family, nowhere in sight. 2-Ton Grizzly, nowhere in sight. Scuzz, Vinny, and Smirk, who I presume have parents, nowhere in sight. The only parents there are Mama and Papa. Preacher Brown, I guess Mrs. Brown is still around. Preacher Brown is like, so that's all there is to it, eh, Too Tall? Are you sure you're being completely honest? And Too Tall's like, what do you mean? All Too Tall had to do here was go, yeah, you saw that there's two ways around Big Bear Rock. I went to the left. I'm not saying it's good to lie. I'm just saying that Too Tall is an expert liar at this point. He has been a drug dealer in the past, right? We know he's dealt drugs. Why now, Too Tall? Are you having trouble with this lie? I don't get it. Different continuity? Perhaps. Because, dun dun dun, it seems to me I remember a shortcut around here, said Preacher Brown. He pushes through some cattails, and lo and behold, there's a hidden creek going between the two ends of the horseshoe. He just paddled down this hidden creek to win the race. Too Tall never went down the rapids. Then we see a full layout of the racetrack. So picture the horseshoe again. We see the swirling whirlpool. We see the 20-step falls. We see Big Bear Rock and how around one side of Big Bear Rock, there's no like swirling whirlpool or steps. And around the other side is the swirling whirlpool and steps. Again, Too Tall and the gang could have gone in that direction, not had a problem. But we also see that at the top of the horseshoe, connecting the two ends of the horseshoe, at the top, is a hidden creek, hidden by cattails. And we see that Too Tall and the gang worked their way up this creek, or across this creek. Now, the creek is positioned. Let me just go back here. The creek is positioned at exactly the starting and finish line of the race, which means that Preacher Brown would have had to have said, ready, get set, paddle, and Too Tall and the gang would have gone 5 feet and then banked right sharply, pushed their way through the cattails, I guess in front of everyone, because there's no way people would not have still been there at the head of the line, at the head of the race, without seeing this happen. There's just no way. There's no way any spectators would have been completely ignorant of Too Tall and the gang cheating unless there were no spectators to begin with. Unless they were waiting at the finish line. However, the creek comes out at the finish line. There's just no, even if it comes out a little south of the finish line, if you were waiting at the finish line, you would have seen them arrive. Like they would have arrived. This is a 5-minute race, maybe a 10-minute race at the most. This shortcut is right at the beginning of the race. Too Tall and this gang would have arrived at the finish line so soon after the race began, there's no way people would not have been suspicious unless, again, there were no people observing the race. They were just kicking back, waiting for the Cubs, I guess, to come back and report who won. No other Cubs at this camp. No other adults watching. Brother and sister, Cousin Fred and Lizzie Bruin, are furious. You cheated. You were dishonest, they yelled. Too Tall, instead of doubling down and saying, no, we just went around the rapids. Yeah, we were dishonest. A little. And he holds up his like pinchy, crushing your head fingers. A little. Now, Preacher Brown gets serious. That's why he's a preacher. He puts his hand on Too Tall's shoulder and leans in. The smell of pipe tobacco thick on his breath. And he says, Too Tall, an honest witness tells the truth, but a false witness tells lies, which makes sense. Now, we can't leave it at that, so Cousin Fred has to butt in. Remember, Cousin Fred, who reads the Bible for fun, I guess, says, that's Proverbs, chapter 12, because he likes to memorize things. Now, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Which is true. This is a whole section of Proverbs that's all about telling the truth. It's all about being honest, not bearing false witness, things like that. So it's something true. It's a bit true. Irrelevant to what we're talking about here. The words of the reckless pierce like swords. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about Too Tall causing like hurt to anyone necessarily. I mean, he's being dishonest, but he's not like lying about a person. He's lying about himself. He guess he's hurting himself, but who cares? It's a race that only 2 groups of Cubs are in. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. Again, not relevant. Too Tall's not trying to help anybody, even if he didn't lie. Not trying to help anybody. In fact, he didn't really lie. He pulled a fast one. He pulled a fast one. Different kind of lying. But Too Tall hears these words. And does he take them to heart? Absolutely not. He does not take them to heart. First, he imagines himself in the greatest costume Mike Berenstain has ever drawn. He imagines himself in his Too Tall hat, his little tough boy cap. He imagines himself in his Too Tall turtleneck, stripes and all, looking a lot like Marvel's Sandman. But the turtleneck actually goes down to just below his knees. It is now a tunic, and he's wearing Roman sandals. That's right. He is envisioning himself in Bible times. And he's being chased by his friends who are also wearing tunics and Roman sandals, who are chasing him with daggers, trying to stab him, swords even. And he also is imagining himself being licked in the face by a cartoon dog. Not a Berenstain Bears cartoon dog. A sort of generic, weird cartoon dog that looks like it came from a different cartoon universe. It's almost like Mike was like, I don't feel like designing a dog. Or maybe this is how Too Tall imagines dogs. Like this sort of Saturday morning cartoon, roughly, hastily sketched dog. I don't know. Because what is going through his head is not the lesson Preacher Brown is trying to teach. He's just imagining, he says, whoa, said Too Tall. Imagining the Bible verses coming alive with swords and tongues. So all Too Tall got out of this was swords, stabbing with swords, I guess, and tongues, which means licking. Wonderful, loving licks. So I guess he's like, okay, murder and dogs, murder and puppies. Murder, my friends are going to try to murder me, Preacher Brown. Violence and puppy dogs. So great. Okay. Lesson taken to heart. Because, and you can say, well, Phil, what does it say after this? Absolutely nothing. The book ends. Preacher Brown says, the blessings. Sorry, that's not my Preacher Brown voice. Yes, agreed Preacher Brown. The blessings of honesty are awesome indeed. Because Tutal's like, swords and tongues, awesome. Cowabunga, dude. He's like, yeah, it's awesome indeed. We do love our blessings of swords and tongues, licking and stabbing. That's what honesty's all about. Thank you so much, Tutal, for cheating at the canoe race, beating the only other 4 cubs who come to my cub out, camp out, sleepover, picnic, jamboree. Next year, we're going to have to let a few more cubs into the camp out, cookout, clubhouse cub around because I'm not making any money off this and I'm having to charge your parents $500 for one night's sleep. I'm just making stuff up now. In the background, we see Mama and Papa and Mrs. Brown setting up a picnic lunch. And Preacher Brown is handing out first place ribbons or like only place ribbons, like winner ribbons, I guess, because there's no other places. It's you either win or you lose to the winners. And we know that Tutal hasn't learned a lesson because while the other gang members look a little cowed, Tutal looks not cowed at all. In fact, Tutal is making that like Berenstain Bears like, let me see, He has like one finger up and he's like, he's gazing at Brother Bear's ribbon. He's like, how can I get my hands on that ribbon? There's adventures in store for Tutal that we're not privy to. Because he hasn't learned anything about being honest. It's called Honesty Counts. I mean, it's just one race. And, honestly, I don't think anybody learned anything. But that's the Berenstain Bears Honesty Counts. Now, I said up top, this book is based on another book. It's based on a book that we already covered. What is the book that we already covered? Well, I'll tell you. I'll let you in on a little secret. The book we already covered is The Berenstain Bears Scouts and the White Water Mystery, a merit badge mystery. Get ready, get set, paddle. It had basically the same plot. The Bear Scouts, which is the same group of cubs, going up against Tutal and his gang, and then Tutal cheats. It's Professor Wise Old Owl or whoever who is like, woo, they took a shortcut. Don't let them get away with it. Honesty. Woo, and that's literally it. Mike took out Professor Wise Old Owl and he added Preacher Brown. But that's it. That's Honesty Counts. It's not available digitally. No, wait. This one is available digitally. That's what it is. I bought this one digitally. You can buy it. You can buy it if you want it. It's good. It's delightfully illustrated, as I like to say. It's one of the Living Lights books, so it's very colorful. It's very cartoony. The characters make delightful faces. I love it a lot. It's fun. I guess no one learns a lesson. There's not much of a lesson. Don't cheat at canoeing, I guess. If you really gotta learn something, just don't cheat at canoeing. That's it. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being part of this bold experiment. If you want to listen to more of me, give me a shout. Listen to me over on It's Del Toro Time. It's my podcast that I do with my daughter, Willow. We just covered Albert Brooks' Defending Your Life. We'll be doing Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence. I don't know if that's going to be good listening, but I think it will be because we're hilarious and fun and good to talk to and good to listen around. So give that a listen or give it a watch because we post everything onto YouTube. Yes, in fact, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you know where to find it, but it's my channel's called Phil Gonzalez. It's also called Ratfish Ripoff, like at Ratfish Ripoff. So you can look for either of those, Phil Gonzalez, Ratfish Ripoff, or just search my show, Deep in Bear Country, my episodes, and you'll find it. You get to watch me and see the pages of the books as I'm talking about them. And sometimes a few other bonus things as well. Not too many bonus things, because I only have a limited amount of time, but sometimes a few bonus things. Also, this is my second time recording this episode, because the first time I recorded it, didn't get any audio. Just got a bunch of video. So be happy that I enthusiastically re-recorded the whole thing for you. But otherwise, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I'll see you all next time, deep in Bear Country. Goodbye.